Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic This Week in WordPress and Tech. This is show 654. This is going to be our last show of 2001, and we've got a great couple of guests. I think it's going to be a great show to end the year. We've got some great stories. I'm going to let the panel quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll be straight into these articles we'll be discussing. First of all, we've got somebody I've been following for years. He's a really knowledgeable individual. I'm going to let him introduce himself. That's Chris Brogan. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself to the WP-Tonic tribe?
Well, I'm so happy to connect with everybody. I don't know how knowledgeable I am. I'll say on a scale of 1 to 10, somewhat. So, I mean, it could be a great day today. And I brought all of the sun with me. So
Yes.
People watching this as a video, God bless. You can all have it. I'll share it with you all. That's
great, Chris. I don't know how much light there will be upon you after this show, but there we go. You did agree. You're adult. So we've got Robert Jacobi with us. He was there. He heard the inspirational words of our WordPress leader on Tuesday. Robert, would you like to introduce yourself to the tribe?
The tribe. Thanks, Jonathan. Quite simply, Robert Jacobi, Director of WordPress at CloudWays, WordPress managed cloud hosting company, doing the thing and hanging out at State of the Word.
There we go. I've got Stephanie, who might be able to keep with us. She's slowly recovering from the virus, but she's
my extra sexy voice today because I'm on the rebound from the Rona, everybody. So I'll have my finger on the mute for my coughing fits, but I'm super happy to be here. I'm Stephanie Hudson, rep and Focus WP. You can find us at focuswp.co.
You sound like Elizabeth Holmes all the time now, Stephanie. So there we go. We've got our old friend join us, Sally. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself?
Did he just call you old, Sally?
I am old.
Old friend. That's what I said, Stephanie. Don't start on me. Don't start on me straight away, Stephanie, for God's sake.
I am Sally Sketch, rhymes with Sketch, the WP fangirl. And Chris, I haven't seen you for ages.
I was thinking the same thing. The minute you lit up on the screen, I was like, Sally! It's been
yes. I mean, it would have been some kind of podcast event in LA.
Sounds about right. So that could have been 2012.
There we go. I've got my friend Spencer. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, Spence from WPLaunchify.com.
And I've got my co-host, the Andrew Palmer. Andrew, would you like?
I'm Andrew Palmer from Bertha.ai. I spelt it correctly this time. And I'm a co-host to try and keep you under control, but there you go.
That's going to be impossible, really. Before we go into our main stories, I've got a quick message from our major sponsor. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back, like I say, but before we go into our main stories, I want to dedicate this podcast to the people and the state of Kentucky. I know that you have gone through a very difficult period, but I'm sure the people and the state of Kentucky will recover. So I dedicate this podcast to you. So we start off the State of the Word 2021, the great insights and powerful words of our great leader. Robert, you were there. What was it like, and what was some of the key things that you got from the presentation, Robert?
Boy, what was it like? It was, I mean, this was sort of the first, I guess, official WordPress event of anything in 2021. Not 2001, but 2021. And there were a solid group of people. I mean, the invitees, the people who requested invites, there were about 50 people at a new, I don't know for how long, automatic office, which used to be the Tumblr office in New York. And it was insanely intimate compared to a typical State of the Word. If you've ever been to one at like WordCamp US, and there wasn't a queue of 1,000 people trying to get in to get that front row seat and whatnot. So, from a physical 3D in real life perspective, boy, you could not beat it. And Matt stayed on topic, on time, which sometimes it can go on for very long. I am a huge Gutenberg fan, so I was thrilled to just hear that. Jonathan, I really enjoyed hearing that push for blocks, more blocks in WooCommerce, block-based themes, all that stuff that's really sort of on the agenda for 2022. I mean, 2021, where everyone's still getting their feet wet. So I love that. I love always the emphasis on 5 for the future. I think that's great. This was some official swag from the event. So I'm just trying to keep that momentum going. I'm a community lover first and foremost. So, I think, Matt does a great job of just trying to get those pieces together. He's got a lot of different topics. I mean, there were topics about, how does the community engage and react to all the acquisitions going on? I think Matt tried. He probably could have been more successful with it in explaining the benefit of that, not just that this is a typical economic life cycle issue. I believe it's good for the community because it does generate more funds and more excitement around things. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of pushback from, well, at least Jonathan on some of these thoughts, but
I really don't.
Jonathan's always trying to get acquired.
That's my aim, Sally, at the end of my career, to get required. I really don't know how to respond because I've made my feelings very public and they're stated, and I don't want me to dominate this. Well, I won't, because I've got a great panel. So, Chris, I don't know if you observed Matt Mayoeg's words of wisdom, if it was on your radar, Chris. I don't know. Do you want to input on this particular story?
Well, listen, all I want to say about it is that first off, I'd sooner listen to people like Robert explain it because, my take is so pedestrian in comparison that it's like I need it filtered through the smart people here. The one thing I will double down on, which it appears we might disagree, I love Gutenberg. And my friend Brian Gardner has his new Frost theme. Brian was with Genesis with Brian Clark and all that. The Frost theme really takes those blocks to heart. And I'm excited about it just because I like that I can just change out a look and feel with a few clicks. You know what I mean? I take all the sex out of design. It's just like clack, 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 new site. Right. But I think if that's where we're still headed, I think there's a lot of people who are going to be happier with that. And then there's another whole lot of people who are going to be sad because, they're specialists and they're frou-frou and, they need it to look a certain way. I don't need it to look a certain way. I just need it to run in a straight line.
Yeah, right. That's fantastic. So, Spencer, what did you get from the words from the great leader?
I started listening to it while I was on my bike, and I finished in the house. It did go on a while. Some of the highlights were, of course, like the individual questions were interesting. But overall, I don't think, the funniest thing is somebody in the post status private group was doing bets like Matt Wallenweg bingo. It's like Bob, when Bob Newhart show, you have to take a shot when, hi, Bob. Well, it was like, what were the words that he was going to say in reference? And I think a lot of people got their cards filled because it was pretty predictable. But on the other hand, that's fine too. Remember I talked 2 shows ago, I said, like, what's he going to do? He's not going to talk about anything controversial, and everything's going to be properly filtered he was wearing Matt Mullenweg, happy young, suit guy, not controversial, let's go get him kind of guy. It wasn't Larry Ellison out there or something like that. So it was good. I was pleased with it, and it was very cordial. Like the smaller space was funny because at one point where he's like, everybody move up a space so it looks like the place isn't empty. That was probably funny for my own personal reasons. But
yeah. So, Stephanie, what did you get from it? It was all sunshine and roses, wasn't it?
like, say what you will, I love Matt Mullenweg. I just think he's such a pro. He is such a pro. I mean, this guy is a programming genius, and he can get up. I mean, look, like what he's done, he's figured out the thing that we all base our careers on, okay?
I
And
think Martin Little had something to do with it.
okay, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Just a
Mike
little
Little.
bit.
He can
Just a
also
little
get
bit.
up there.
Mike-
Just
Mike-
a little
Mike
bit
Little.
of. Just a
Mike
little.
Little.
Thank you, Andrew. Mike Little.
Mike Little. Sorry, I
Where
apologise.
is Mike Little today?
Well,
In
that's
Britain
a
somewhere,
good.
that's where he
That's an
lives.
interesting. That's an interesting conversation.
Is he like
and
the
it's,
third Apple founder guy? The guy who
Listen,
sold the shares?
Mike Little's doing okay for himself. He's great. He's actually part of the Humanist Society in the UK. He's also a diversity king, and he works for.
Yeah, it works
Human
like this. Mike, you're black. Run our diversity.
Well, I don't accept that. I think he volunteered. In fact, I know he volunteered because I know Mike Little. I've met him half a
Yeah,
dozen
I know
times.
him, and sadly,
And,
he's one of the
he's a-
nicest
he's a good
people.
Oh,
guy.
I've
Good guy.
I've seen him. He's like an amazing, wonderful guy.
He's
I'm
awesome.
not
He's
saying
awesome.
that
He
to
doesn't
criticize
get
him.
half the kudos that he should.
Um,
And it annoys me to, he does not get any kudos for what he's done. He is the co-founder. In fact, the story is, and this is the story from Mike Little, because he was interviewed. I listened to one of his interviews the other day. Is that he put it out there to fork the particular thing, and it was Matt Mullenweg that answered the query, right?
That's what it says on Wikipedia.
It's actually Mike Little that started WordPress, and Matt joined him. So let's get it right. Let's get it right about
Yeah,
Mike.
let's get it right, Stephanie. He's very
Right.
good at publicising himself.
To be clear,
Stephanie.
I didn't mess any of that up.
Right.
All I'm saying is Matt does a good job of this. This is a no-win job, right? You're going to give a talk about a super boring subject to a ton of super critical people, like thousands of very, very critical audience members. Yeah, exactly. People are just there waiting to just tear it apart. And he does it with a smile on his face and his corny jokes, and he knows that it's boring, and he just plows through anyway. And the way he handles the questions at the end is so masterful. I realized this a couple years ago at WordCamp US. These people would ask the most asinine questions. It was like they just wanted to get in front of everybody and say their names. And he remembers everybody's names for starters. Like when they just say it real quick at the beginning and then ask a 10-minute question, he remembers their names. He treats everybody with dignity. Like he'd never, like I would be like, oh my God, that question is so dumb. And he would treat it with dignity and he would answer it thoughtfully. And so I don't know. I have a lot of respect for him for those sort of things, the way he handles it. The thing that I do not understand from the talk is why we have duotones and why they are a big deal. Like I was like, what? He was so excited about it. And I'm like, is this a thing? Like that's just CSS. Like, do we really need that? Like, I don't know. That just all seemed so silly. And does that belong in core? I don't know. Like that was my only sort of like, what?
It's a feature.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I mean, it's a little cute CSS thing, and those sorts of effects go through periods of being trendy. But one does have a moment of thinking, like, this is the most important thing you could think of to mention.
He was pumped about it. He was pumped about duotones. And also, like, the builders all have duotones, right? I know Divi does. I don't know anybody who uses it. Like, nobody cares about duotones.
I am so rebuilding my site as 100% duotoned.
You should.
Like just from top to bottom.
There was just one thing, actually.
What was it?
What's going on? Just one thing that's going on, Robert, that I thought was when he was asked in the question section about, from Bob about WooCommerce, and he said, well, it's a plugin, which it is. Do you think that's maybe just the way it's framed is maybe a problem? Because I really see WooCommerce as central, and it should be in a way totally its own thing in a way. Did that the way it was framed, WooCommerce? Did you have any view about that, Robert?
I mean, that's all technically correct. I mean, it is a plugin. I mean, it's a very all-encompassing plugin because, I mean, once you commit to doing things in WooCommerce, you've sort of, really entered a different world. I did have a chance, outside of the actual State of the Word to speak with Matt and Paul, the CEO of WooCommerce, and they do have stuff coming up in the next year to kind of make it more accessible, make it more, user business friendly than it is now. There is a push to get that out the door. So, for folks who are really just in the WordPress space, I think saying it's a plugin is fair. That at least gives them a frame of reference for what's going on and how it exists. Certainly, once you get into the nitty gritty, it's another world.
Right.
I have something I want to throw in here though, because two things back to back though make it kind of interesting. In a world where Robot Zuckerberg is talking about the metaverse and all this, we go over to Matt Mullenweg and he goes, "Great news, guys! Duotones and plugins." Like that's his intellectual property. That's his stake, his hill he's going to die on. Microsoft shows off all those cool, almost Second Life avatars without legs. And he goes, "You can look like Spotify all day now if you want." Like that's not like somebody did not do his homework and showed up to the book report with very precious little pages.
I really want to push back on that one. First of all, the garbage fest that's the Facebook metaverse is just creating noise and clutter on the internet. That boy, we were just talking earlier on the the pre-show in the green room. I sent you a message. Stephanie sent me a message on Facebook. I'm like, what? Like I'm going to read that, but I think Matt really tried to stake a more practical aspect to actually doing stuff certainly in the short term and the long term. His statement, Gutenberg is bigger than WordPress, and he's right. It's going to be a platform that I think helps more open source projects take advantage of more cool stuff. And then Openverse, that's a huge big deal. That's real stuff that people are using today. I'm not having to buy a $7,000 headset that I'm going to have to throw away in 1 year and have, advertising injected directly into my retinas. So, I'm going to disagree on that. I think Openverse and Gutenberg is sort of the untold, interesting portion of the whole WordPress State of the Word.
I agree with you, Robert. Absolutely.
I'm so surprised.
It's so unusual that I agree with anybody, really, because I'm just that sort of.
Well, you never agree with anything I say, Robert.
Well, that's because it's you, isn't it? Well, I'm a devil's advocate. No, Mr. Jacobi is great. We had a few drinks by a bar a few weeks ago now, and we got involved in some in-depth conversations about WordPress, where it's going, what it's about, why it should be protected. And I think what the state of the word every year is about protecting WordPress, not necessarily WordPress.org, but certainly protecting the investment that Matt and Salesforce and a few other people have put a few million dollars into to make it the $3.8 billion company it is now, or $7 billion company now. And to protect it, it needs to reach out to the community, make sure that the community is still engaged. And his comments on the community were quite pertinent, because there is some, there's some very loud noises out there, and there's only a few people out there, and we all know that the squeaky wheel gets heard, because they, the minority of the people that are criticizing WordPress, and it is a minority because most people just get on with it, they're making a lot of noise about nothing, in my view. So we're very lucky to have WordPress. We live on it. We live on it. We earn our living through it.
I'm not going to go on a bender with this at all, but
I respect what they're doing. I
think you've totally taken the coup, Andrew. But that's your business. I want to cover.
In my country.
This is going to be a slightly long show. If any of the panel, as this windy road progresses, what need to jump out, obviously you got my permission. But I like to get 2 stories before we go for our break. So let's go on to the next story, which is about what happened in Kentucky and the criticism that Amazon has received and some other business enterprises have faced in how. First of all, I'm going to throw this question over to Chris. But Chris, I want to make one thing clear to you, Chris, that I've gone to the Amazon re-education camp, which is run by China and Apple, and I've been re-educated. And I just want to say to you, Chris, and the audience, that any kind of liability that Amazon had in this and its great founder is totally unjustified, Chris. You know, their workers need to understand that they're kind of organic, like Sonia in Sonia 451. They're just there to be used and for the greater good of Amazon, and the great leader, the great scientists like in Blade Runner, you know, Wallace, its founder is almost the greatness of Blade Runner, really. And their sacrifice, them dying for such a great company, Chris, means that this great founder can go to the stars, Chris. I just want to make that totally clear to you, Chris. What do you think of the story, Chris?
I have one detail that sticks out, and it's terrible, but it's this one little detail that sticks out. There's this poor Amazon truck driver. This stuff starts going on, and he's like, what do I do? Where do I go? What happens? And they go, get in the bathroom. Bathrooms are usually pretty safe during tornadoes. That's great. Get in the bathroom. Okay, I'll get in the bathroom. Wham! The tornado wrecks the bathroom. Guy dies. All I'm thinking is, here's this guy who has no tornado skills or knowledge whatsoever, probably skipped tornado training class, and went into the bathroom, and you know, God is a capricious beast and said, I will smite you in there. I can find you. And I just think that poor man's life, like he you know, had been out on the road, had been driving, knows you're not supposed to drive around during a tornado, does everything right, and still doesn't work. And I feel like there must be sort of a metaphor right under the surface there for the rest of the universe, based in, it doesn't matter. You could be in an Amazon truck or an Amazon bathroom, but if, you know, the spirits that be want to come and get you, they're going to find you.
Yeah, but what do you think about this totally unfair criticism of Amazon and its founder, how it treats its, you know, they had the audacity to want to go home to their families. You know, it's terrible, I feel.
I mean, they don't have their cell phones. They can wait until after the shift. I think that, you know, I mean, how am I going to get my guitar pick punching kit that takes, you know, hotel room keys and turns them into guitar picks if they close and abandon that shop? That's not going to happen.
I just think the media have lost it. It's disgusting. You know, we depend on this Chinese rubbish that we live on. And these workers need to know that they need to sacrifice themselves.
The horse is dead.
John, that horse is dead. Go away from it. So basically, what we're trying to say and what we're trying to understand is that employees were put at risk because of capitalism, right? It doesn't matter which company it is. Just because it was Amazon, that's the way it is. So effectively, their safety officers should have said, right,
safety officers.
Well, there's safety officers there. It's a legal requirement. And Stephanie's ready to speak. Go for it.
Andrew, this is America. They don't know what the word means, safety officers.
Listen, I'm not defending all of Jeff Bezos' decisions or anything like that. But I think this particular case, I've done a bit of reading about it. And really, like, in that part of the world, that like strip of the middle of this country, tornado warnings happen all the time. And, you know, I was reading some comments from other people who live in that area. If we stopped work for every tornado siren that went, like, no work would get done. Like, it's for a certain time of the year, it's very frequent. And that building was steel reinforced concrete walls. Like, anywhere in that building was one of the safest places you could probably be. Like, you can't go home. Like, it's once those alarms go off, like you don't go get in your car and drive. So you have to kind of stay there. And then also the bathrooms are probably just like 2x4s with a drop ceiling, right? Like they're not any more secure except for the fact that they're probably in the middle of the building, which could be a safer place to go, except for the fact that like this tornado was massive and indiscriminate, and it just blew through the whole center of that building and took out the bathrooms with it. So it's like, it wasn't like, I think this was just a case of a really sucky situation. A tornado is nuts. You could have a strip of houses and it could hit every other house. Like it could just bounce over them, destroy one and leave the next door neighbor perfectly intact. Like there's no really like prepping for this other than the fact that they were already in this like massively reinforced warehouse. So I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, Jeff Bezos has a lot to answer for, but I don't know that this is like one of them. Like if they needed to take shelter in a bathroom and he wouldn't let them, okay. But if they're already like, if that's not really any more shelter, then I don't know. Yeah, keep working.
So Spencer, what do you think about this story?
The only part of the story that's interesting to me are the trigger words that have become a catchphrase in our society that they trigger me, at least. Whenever somebody who is on the borderline of doing something wrong or evil or a politician hears something bad happen, thoughts and prayers. My thoughts and prayers. That will cure everything.
Strike out to me, yes.
My company just murdered your whole family. My thoughts and prayers are with you. That will make it better. Now, not to say anything about the underlying reason people do praying, but like the fact that those catchwords have become so trite and that Bezos would utter them are kind of like when he got off his phallic rocket ship after burning a lifetime of carbons and said, thank you to all the employees who work for me that made this possible. It's like so
terrible.
Dead, so.
Yeah, that's something we're criticizing. That was bad.
What?
Yeah. Well, to Stephanie's point, I think, Chris's like big lesson is nature is still bigger than we are. And we'll continue to be. And I was born and raised in tornado country, and now I live in earthquake country, plus probably flood country because I actually live on, land reclaimed from a swamp. So if the big one comes, we're going to get a tsunami. And I probably won't be able to blow up the raft in time. And those things do happen, and they can be beyond comprehension. However, the fact that, we have these stories about both this Amazon warehouse, and my husband saw a story about a candle factory with a similar situation that people wanted to leave work early when there started to be more distant warnings, long before the siren goes off, but hey, that looks like this thing is heading your direction. And we're told, no, you stay until the end of your shift. And it happened that the factory was wiped out and their homes were not. And, you don't know that's what's going to happen, but then it looks bad. Some stuff is unpreventable, but the reason that there are agencies like OSHA is to investigate and find out, was there something more that could be done and should have been done and wasn't? Or was this just one of those things where, well, they had a solid building, it had been inspected, it had whatever, and it still wasn't enough? Because what we do often isn't, and we don't like learning that.
No. So, Robert, I take what Stephanie had to say, and I thought there was great insight in what Stephanie had to say. But on the other hand, I think in corporate America, I do sense a bit like, but I just want to see, and especially tech companies, and kind of Amazon is a kind of tech, is tech company, I suppose, it is a tech company. So I sense a bit of the Somnia 451 in a lot of companies. They tend to treat their lower staff as kind of, how to put it? I wouldn't say slaves, but kind of robot-like. Do you think there's any insight in what I've just said? And what's your feelings about the whole thing, Robert?
I'm not sure which bait I'm supposed to take that you've thrown out in the last 10 minutes. I I don't know if we're looking for a productive answer, or is this like a Fox News rantathon? The tragedies around the tornado are fundamentally tragedies. I don't know how those will be explained, recovered and whatnot. In fact, the Amazon warehouse that you guys are talking about is in my state of Illinois. So that's the one that got hit. And we had, if I last checked, 6 fatalities out of that. The Kentucky, even worse incident is at the candle factory. Do I feel that companies at a minimum should have a high ethical standard for every human being working for them? Absolutely. Do we get that? Absolutely not. And the crux of the matter isn't who's doing it and who's not, is that it's more along the lines, and I'll bite a little bit on your China rant, is that we don't seem to have a buyer's perspective on what those inequalities actually mean. If we're taking the China example, I am never going to be in one of those factories. I have no idea what's going on those production lines. I can hope that some of the news gets out, given the the status of the country. That's also very difficult. So I think if we focus more on asking people to really take a look at what tchotchkes they're buying, what they're actually putting. I mean, we're investing our times in our lives to create wealth for ourselves, and then we share it, spend it, however you want to decide. And I think the bigger question is, how do we, let's call it, how do we instill at least an idea of ethical buying versus this is bad, this is good. It's not going to magically happen, but just even having a little bit of that thought, I think, can go a long way. I'm sure there are very many ethical companies in China as well. And so it's not like you want to just take someone off the table entirely. On the other hand, I think, trying to do little bits and pieces along the way makes a big difference. None of this stuff's going to happen overnight. You want to rant at the fact that there's, a billionaire in space. You know what? I don't got a problem with a billionaire in space. I hope that trickles down so that there can be, 100 heirs in space. But I don't necessarily also want to see that at the expense of, everyone else on the planet. I don't see that today, in all honesty. I don't see, I think it's more of everyone else isn't looking at all the other questions that should be asked in the economic capitalist system.
Yeah, I totally say, Chris, I'm going to let you finish off. I'll spin, a bit of my English sarcasm. And as Andrew said, I've probably pushed it a bit too far. But I think the crux of it, Chris, is should staff have to be able to use their personal mobile devices? Obviously, a company has to have rules. It can't allow everybody just to be on a phone all day on social media. But on the other hand, when
the
you
robots will run you over.
Yeah, exactly. But on the other hand, you are in an area that has tornadoes, and being able to see the latest information to ban all your staff to have a device that might be able to save their lives seems slightly linked to a certain type of attitude. What do you reckon, Chris?
So that, to me, the interesting part is that there's a few narratives you can cook. One of the narratives is, wow, those capitalists are so bad they made those people work throughout the tornado, which is surely not what happened. They're doing their job like they normally do. And like was mentioned before, tornado warnings come all the time. You tend to work through the tornado. And all I'm thinking is that there's some like chippy right next door to that Amazon place that also blew up, and nobody's yelling at that guy, right? Like, because he's just, one guy, one employee, and it doesn't sound the same when you try to explain how evil it was to keep the one guy flipping fries out of the fry-o-lator. It doesn't sound as sad a story. The part about the phones, it does weave a narrative that we seem to want to tell right now, which is, people are trying to quit. People are trying to reclaim their humanity at work. And I can't fathom working at a place where they're like, hand over your phone, please, sir, unless it's like Area 51. Like I would, there's a few roles I could take in my life where I would be like, yes, you may have my device, because I'm then going to touch a lightsaber or something. Like I'm into that. But I can't see too many areas of employment where I would like surrender what I consider my personal technology. So I think it's interesting because it's almost like what they always say about statistics, right? Like, so numbers, people say numbers don't lie, but the truth is you can make numbers say anything. See, look at the doctor. She knows.
We can hear you, Sally.
I thought for a minute it was the voices in my head until other people like turned. But it's
Hey,
totally
when I was in college, one of the books we had to read was How to Lie with Statistics.
There's lies, and damn statistics.
Right. Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Yes, that's it. Well, we need to go for our break. It's been a great conversation apart from my little rant in the second story, which Andrew put me right straight away. But we're going to go for our break and we'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. We've had a good discussion. If you want to join the discussion more, please join the WP-Tonic Facebook group page, the mastermind group. You'll be able to join the discussion, give feedback, tell me that I'm an absolute idiot. I regularly get posts telling me about that. But I've got broad shoulders to some extent, getting broader every time I do an episode of this show. So on to story 3, Elementor WordPress secret growth driver. Well, I'm going to put this to Spencer. Spencer, I just don't think these people are on, these people are on message. They don't realize that Jetpack is the real driver of WordPress growth, do they?
I mean, the problem is there's always a fallacy in statistics of causation, right? And in this case, Yoast has got an interesting proposition, but I don't know if it's necessarily like that this follows from that. We've talked about the fact that Elementor has something like 5.9 million users, which is terrific. But if you ask a majority of people whether they use Elementor, I don't know that that's necessarily the truth. With 43% of the internet on WordPress, I think that's a lot more than 5.9 million. So it's, there's a lot of gaps in the logic. The other part of this that's interesting is I'm not really sure whether or not this is relevant anymore, because like Chris and Robert and myself and Andrew and we've all decided to drink the Gutenberg Kool-Aid. And so from that standpoint, my argument is that removing this extra layer of Elementor from everybody's consciousness as a requirement in order to get anything done is going to be the most liberating thing to WordPress's growth of all. I mean, quite literally, it's unhooking the horse from the wagon and saying you don't need this thing anymore in order to get stuff done. Whereas before, unfortunately, you did, right? I mean, our good friend over here, Chris Gardner, and everybody else in the space where I was years ago had to teach you how to code the website to make it do stuff. And I gave that up in 2014 with these page builders. But now in 2021, I've gone cold turkey on the page builders and said, let's do this, Gutenberg.
You definitely have seen the light, haven't you? I think it's been the biggest.
And I want to say, of all my daily calls, right, and I speak to half a dozen people a day, not a single Divi or Elementor person has balked when I show them on screen what they could be doing instead with Gutenberg. Even hardcore, I love Divi to my grave, can't deny when I go, wait, fine, leave Divi alone. Let me just show you a new page. And all of the things between the two pieces of bread are done with Gutenberg. They can't deny how simple it is. So
Andrew, what did you make of this article?
Well, I spoke and interviewed Yoni and Ben when they first started Elementor, and I was always very impressed with Ben. Yoni not so much, because he's quite a shy guy, but obviously very pragmatic and does what he does. And I think any plugin or any kind of anything on WordPress that has 5.6 million active users is a massive achievement. But if you look at it, it's kind of about the same percentage as Shopify or Squarespace or whatever. So it's quite small in comparison to what Spencer was saying of what WordPress is. So it's a big ecosystem. There's room for everyone. Gutenberg is the future for WordPress. There's no doubt in my mind that it's the future. And we've just got to embrace it. And there's no reason why page builders and Gutenberg can't work together. They work together now. You can design your website with a page builder, be it Beaver Builder, Divi, or Elementor, or Brizey or whatever you Brizey, whatever you care to use, and you can still use Gutenberg blocks in conjunction with, even on the same page. And that's what Divi are moving towards as well. They've even got a block module so that you can import a Gutenberg block. And the stuff that Spencer's doing is phenomenal. And Poodle Press as well, James Marsden, he has transformed the way that you display WooCommerce within.
I call him Mr. Gutenberg now.
He's great. So I don't actually care what Elementor are doing, as long as they keep doing it well, because they are doing it well. Elementor for a lot of users, not me, is phenomenal. But congratulations to them for having 5.6 million downloads. I don't know what that translates to monetary wise. How many active users have they got on their payment plans? And also, when they changed the payment plan from unlimited to 1,000 websites on Expert, there was a massive backlash on that. And really, if you're going to build 1,000 websites, 999 quid a year isn't going to kill you, is it? Let's be honest. So, congratulations to them, but it doesn't actually matter in the ecosphere.
No, so I'm going to throw it over to Chris. Chris, I think Andrew had something. What do you? This is a rather broad question. Hopefully, you can zero in. What do you see WordPress as actually being? What do you think WordPress is, Chris?
I mean, what I want it to be and what I kind of hope it could be out in the world is, I remember the first time we sort of went through this, I remember being in the world of BBSs and IRC, and then things like AOL came along and we were like, well, that's kind of easy. But then in your belly, you had this feeling, easy, but I can't do this thing that seems like it just should be so easy to do, and I can't do it. And so the world started doing things right at that moment, like web TV showed up, and web TV was just clearly and immediately at that time, to make it sound as derogatory as I can, kind of the trailer park internet, because it was, you throw this thing on top of your TV and then it runs. And then you don't really need to know the internet. You've got training wheels internet. So it's like another way, like AOL. So then here comes like Wix and Weebly and all the WYSIWYGs, and they were a delight. You know what I mean? Because if you're a florist and someone says, well, let's crack open WordPress, that's the worst. That's the worst. It's like buying an old timey Linux box and showing somebody like Debian without the Mac on top of it and saying, hey, let's learn how to use a computer, shall we? And they're like, I just want to sell a flower. And so Wix and Weebly and all that is great. So then comes, Divi, Elementor, Beaver Builder, and a whole bunch of other delightful things that we all go, drag, drop. And then we're like back in Weeblyville. What should WordPress be? The real answer now, and thank you, Gutenberg. Gutenberg is a perfect delivery system to every voice device. If I don't mention she who shan't be named, it's perfect for, fast search snippets. The Gaagala can search it a little faster and easier, and it's kind of built those snippets. The whole thing about page rank and then suddenly passage rank, Gutenberg is passage rank. It's like, welcome, I'm here for you, right? So there's all these things that people can take advantage of that are super powerful, and yet they're tucked in gently and calm, and everyone can appreciate a block. And the only thing you have to get over is that it will never look as pretty as like a $40,000 designed page. You just have to accept that if you're going to go all Gutenberg and no Divi, that you'll never have the color you want. You'll never be able to just put your stupid head next to your stupid hero phrase without a lot of humans teaching you how to do it right until someone's, come back around for that. So that's my take. My take is that what WordPress is the internet the way we're supposed to make it for most people who want pages. And Gutenberg is basically the best possible way of translating that to devices that don't care about the face of the internet anymore. Yeah.
So, Robert, what did you make of this article and what Chris has just said?
Boy, I wish I actually had read the article from Yoast. That would have been great. But
I don't read any of them either, so don't worry.
It's been a busy day already. Yeah, and Elementor is not going to be the first and only one who starts doing that. You're going to see other SaaSes pop up on WordPress that make life easier for end users. Heck, even, I like to always compare to, I'm so glad that Chris brought up BBSs. That really takes me back like 1,000 years. I'm like, oh, wait, I can't wait to, start editing my config files in GBBS Pro. Oh yeah, go way back. But, if I'm getting a car, I can get all kinds of cars. They're at some level, many of them are pretty gosh darn the same. They have wheels, they go forward, they go backward, you can turn, and that's great for a lot of people. And it doesn't have to cost $1 billion to get one. You can also get a Porsche, you can also get a Mercedes-Benz, you can also get a Lamborghini, and yeah, you're going to pay for it. And people who have those desires and needs are going to spend that time to get that more custom, if I can extend the metaphor, experience. But there are plenty of Honda Accords in the world which are better this year than last year. And they're 1,000 times better this year than they were 10 years ago. So just because we're taking these steps into Gutenberg and, I can't customize the heck out of it today, doesn't mean that process won't evolve in a more natural way as people get accustomed to using these kinds of tools. If we look at our mobile phones. People figured out how to text messages to each other with 9 buttons. How insane was that? And now we all have visual keyboards where we can type in whole things to each other. Well, that's a tech shift, and that's okay. And people got used to more software in their lives. And having these tools with maybe more, what's the word I'm looking for? Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office has tried to do this, over the last 2 decades. Let's hide some of the unnecessary, confusing stuff, make expose dynamically more relevant information, and we'll get there. This is how tech evolves. No one's sitting there, hitting C:\\\/ I don't even remember the directory commands. All I can think of is Linux now. But no, we just go to our file browser, double click on a folder. Wow. Did that ruin the file experience for everyone? Quite the contrary. It made it so much better and more meaningful.
Yeah, just go a quick follow.
Complain about the Gutenbergification of WordPress. I think it's a must to continue keeping WordPress relevant.
Yeah, just go a quick follow through question. It was pointed out on Tuesday, State of the Word. Matt pointed out the decline in Joomla, obviously because you've been involved in Joomla or part of your career. You're very linked. What's your own view about what seems to be the decline of Joomla? Was you surprised, or would you not got any view about that at all?
Oh, I got plenty of views. I don't know if I have enough time here today. They're first and foremost, they are very different communities, very open source focused, but very different in their outlook on how they want to, how WordPress wants to engage with the community, how Joomla wants to engage with the community. They almost, if there were opposite ends of the spectrum in the open source world, I would say that, there are extremes at both ends that sort of drive some of the differences. Joomla had a crazy start in reaction to corporate control over software. I mean, first and foremost, it was a project that was based out of Australia. It was called Mambo. There was a fundamental core reaction, pun intended, with the developers about how the owners of it were trying to do things that they didn't think were open sourcey appropriate. So I feel that there's always been this small or large sliver of, we just don't want all that corporate baggage that comes with having an open source project. The problem is lot of people go into open source projects to help make themselves more valuable, relevant in communities, in their chosen professions and whatnot. And if you're kind of like slightly cutting that off at the knees by saying we're I am paraphrasing, but it is my general feeling that we're not willing to work in any meaningful way in a commercial aspect, then that people start saying, well, this has been a great project, we've been able to accomplish a lot, but you know what, I can get a full-time job in doing WordPress much more easily than I can in Joomla. And so that what starts as a whisper now becomes more of a trend. So if I'm not as passionate about the core mission, maybe I just want to have a job, and I like open source, but this one actually pays better and gives me more stability in my life, so I can do the other things I want. Yeah. And I think a lot of that has slowly trickled away from Joomla.
Thanks for that, Robert. I thought, having you on the show, I needed to ask you that because you right. So on to the next story. Sorry. Chris and Robert, I seem to have certain individuals and certain companies that provide endless stories to me, and Tim Cook and Apple are one of those. So Chris, Mr. Cook and his dealings with China and his wokeness in general, in pointing out other people's misdeeds. How do you see all this panning out, Chris?
Mr. Cook in China. That'll be my 12th book. I write Mr. Cook in China, but I think I'm always impressed by how incredibly prescient and observing people are once they've gotten through the gate they needed to get through. Tim Cook in China is also like saying Elon Musk and handouts, right? I don't think any of these people should get an electrical vehicle handout, is what he said. After he cleaned up his couple $100 million from him. That's just cheating, getting electric car money now that I have mine. So I feel like a little bit of that with Tim Cook in China. I also think China is a really, really complicated problem. That feels like kicking the ball down the court. But I think that, on the one hand, there's all these questions about what we know the government does or doesn't do. And then I always just try to think about what this person does. Like, what does this person do on any given weekday to earn their very small amount of money to make their very small amount of food stretch or whatever? Like, when you get retrofit into capitalism, it's not pleasant for anybody. I mean, at least in other cultures, we went through some porridge times. Like, we went through a cottage industry into an industrial industry into a whatever. These people got pushed ahead of the line. They were in a rice field, and then after lunch they showed up in a factory making SpongeBob scales for fat kids in America. So it's a terrible experience in general to be the human on the ground in China, let alone having a guy like Tim Cook all at once trying to advocate for Chinese people, sell billions into that environment, and also benefit from the cost of what it takes.
But it's but Chris, it's the what kind of standed out to me is the sheer hypocrisy and wokeness of Tim Cook's position that I found amazing. What's your response to that?
Well, okay, so I have an idea because I have to bolt out. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get over to Cupertino right now and see if I can get that answer. So Andrew and Sally and Stephanie Spencer and Robert, please carry on the show. I'll be right back with an answer from Tim Cook. Be right back.
Right. Oh, he's gone. He's left us
very,
as well.
Very clever exit line.
Right.
Chris doesn't mess around.
Yeah. So, Sally, what was your own take on this story?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right about the hypocrisy, and my husband is Dutch, so he has a good eye for hypocrisy. Notices it everywhere, except of course among the people that he agrees with or in himself, because that's what humans are like. And I have however, I mean, you know, we're the people out there buying this stuff. We're the people out there who are, you know, we've gotten spoiled by having the availability of cheap things. And, you know, I've started looking at some of the people who are like, yes, this is, you know, we sell the ethically sourced, we pay our people well stuff. And you know what? I can't afford that. It's difficult, but it's like, well, you know, I could buy these sorts of things and have like
Yeah, but
four
I'm sorry,
outfits.
I just point
ever.
out, but I've got to point out, Sally, we're not talking exactly cheap products when we're talking about
No,
Apple, are we?
Apple's products are not cheap, but you know, there are still the people who buy them. I'm not one of them, because although the Apple products are nice enough, you just you do not get the bang for your hardware buck. And there's also all of that, you know, anti-right to repair kind of stuff that doesn't sit immensely well with me. But it's sort of like, well, it's not that it's wrong to condemn companies for this. It's just that we also need to look in the mirror at the fact that we are helping these companies to carry on doing this. And it's tough not to. I remember reading a story about, you know, somebody who attempted to buy nothing from China for a year and discovered it was almost impossible to find much of anything that was not made in China. And, you know, it's Reagan's government that was out there encouraging companies to offshore. And, you know, that genie is not likely to go back into the bottle very easily.
So, Stephanie, what did you make of this article and what Mr. Cook's been up to in China?
Unfortunately, I am at the part of the day where my COVID brain kicks in and I shut down completely. I'm fading, you guys. I can't do it.
All right.
Yeah, my phone's
you
gonna
might
ring
be
in a
time to
second.
go get some medicine, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of the other panel.
Ibuprofen is my recommendation for the
Yes.
week, if anybody wants to know.
All right.
Lifesaver.
All right. So, Robert.
Looks like Chris didn't get there in time. Tim's calling me right now, so I gotta
Oh my
go.
God, look at this.
Don't go as well, Robert. Please.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of the show. Thanks so
All right.
much, Jonathan
Bye,
and Andrew.
Jacobi. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, I gotta
Going
go.
to take a nap.
Bye.
No, don't go. Don't know the rest of you, because I want to definitely discuss the 5th article. So
I can't. My phone's gonna ring.
oh, please, Dave, please. Oh, she's off. So, shall we go on to story 5 then? Shall we? Because I thought it was a really interesting story, Wrestling with Capitalism, from a competitor of mine, Natalie from Access Sally. But I thought it's been something I've been struggling with myself, because I always see myself as a business owner. So I always saw myself as a capitalist, you know, but now after her article, I don't quite, but I've had increasingly during the year, Spencer, what am I really moments. What did you think of her piece and her little video, Spencer?
Well, she and her husband are a contrarian anyway, because if we've talked about the plugin, their plugin is a framework. It's not a plugin. So it's in the format of a plugin, but it requires you to say, I'm basically all in with doing things differently or backwards, you know, driving. I always say driving on the wrong side of the highway. So I think that she lives up to her promise on that, because I don't think that they see their solution as one where they're just participating in a larger ecosystem, but rather acquiring customers for the long haul who are basically, you know, recurring subscribers, recurring payers, and so forth. I asked myself at my age and stage what it is that I want to achieve. And I think that everybody at every point in their life who's doing entrepreneurial things has to say, why am I doing this? What I do find in the WordPress space with regard to her comment is that there's not going to be, in my opinion, many people who start from scratch and build something to the point of a Yoast or a Pippin or a, you know, whatever Justin Farron meant. I think that there will be too much money from too many verticals that will compete with that and make it that the future will be people will be essentially building stuff to be acquired or building stuff to be part of a larger system versus in the past, I don't even know, honestly, if you ask Pippin, I don't think he ever said he started out thinking like one day I'll have 12 employees and sell this company. But remember the article last week when Justin Farron said, you should be building something with recurring revenue so that your multiplier is an X value multiplier instead of this. He's factually correct, but I think he's speaking from a historical perspective, whereas Nathalie is speaking in realistic terms. Like, I think somebody in this space right now should think, what can I do today that A, won't be taken away from me, B, I can do when I'm older, C, if I do decide to sell it, it's not like a sellout. I'm selling it because it provided me some other avenue. Because the last part of this I would comment on, historically, I've known myself and I've seen it myself and I've experienced lots of stories I've read about people I don't know. Somebody makes a company, gets extraordinarily popular, sells it for a ton of money, and they're 32 years old. Guess what happens? 15 minutes after they sell it, they're immediately depressed and filled with remorse. Why? Because like Viktor Frankl's book, they don't have any meaning in their life anymore. And so they immediately go off and have to start something from scratch, which begs the question of why sell the thing at all then? And the only reason that I can think of would be in some cases with plugins and otherwise, it's like working at a factory. After 5 years of doing the same thing with one plugin, you realize like it's going to support me and my kids, but like I'm making the same widget every day, the same thing. So I don't have a better answer than that because there's no conclusion to it, but it's just.
No, I thought it was very Andrew, I really loved the video, and I really admire Nathalie because I think she's one of the sharpest women entrepreneurs that I've interviewed. No, I've always liked her work, the way she does things. But then there's the cynical side of me, Andrew, not the really very positive side of me. Just thought, oh, Nathalie, I do hope you don't sell to GoDaddy in 2 years and you have to come out with a puff piece about why you're you're going to be changing GoDaddy's culture. And you got the audacity to make me have to listen to that bullshit. So I didn't know what to make of it. Can you please help, Andrew?
I didn't watch the video. The reason I didn't watch the video because I was too busy building another business. My whole point of being in business is to build it, grow it, and sell it. There is no other reason for my existence in this world, in the business world. I've done it with restaurants. I've had 3 restaurants. I've sold each one for a profit. I sold Elegant Marketplace after 5 years. I think it's a 5-year plan, maximum 5-year plan. If you can build something, I've built something now, launching it today, and before it was even launched, somebody asked me to buy it. So the whole point of being in business is it's like a franchise. I used to work for Sinorama franchise, in the UK, and people were buying a job when they buy a franchise. That's my view of franchising. You buy yourself a job because the only person really that makes money out of that is the franchisor, the guy that owns the actual licensing for the franchisoring. And I saw this guy who was the owner of Sinorama UK make a lot of money from 40, 50 franchisees. So I'm not buying a job here. When I sold Elegant Marketplace, that put me into a position where I could invest and I could relax actually for a couple of years, just sit back and say, right, what do I want to do? And what I want to do is be involved in the WordPress ecosphere, grow businesses, help other people grow their businesses. All the plugin that I'm launching today is in conjunction with someone else. I've financed it. I'm the money. It's as simple as that. They're the skill set. And I want people to succeed as much as I want to succeed. So, you know, it's an equal partnership. It's all 50-50. And that's what I did with Page Builder Cloud. 50% was owned by Sean. I sold my 50% to Melissa. Same thing with Layouts Cloud. And Elegant Marketplace was sold to InMotion. What they're doing with it, why should I care? I don't own it anymore. I've been paid out, you know, but I do actually care because, you know, there are some vendors there that I've made some good friends with. So I think if you can become, Heather said it really quite succinctly, and I can't remember what she actually said, but I've always regarded myself as a communist capitalist or a socialist capitalist. If you build something, treat your staff as well as you can, as kindly as you can, nurture them, grow them, make them come out to actually become you and be the managing director of their own little section. And they then profit from it in many ways. They profit from it in learning, they profit from it in personal growth, and they profit from it in making the company bigger and better. So when you sell the company, you then reward them accordingly. So I don't worry about being a capitalist because I also share, and I build.
Yeah, I think that
I built to sell.
Yeah, I think that. I thank you so much for that, Andrew. But that, just to finish off before we go on to limited recommendations and finish this show, and thank you both of you to staying on. Spencer, that's to finish off. That's the key question I want to put to you, Spencer, because Natalie seemed to suggest you can be an entrepreneur and not be a capitalist, not be part of this kind of global system, which, like her, I have great concerns about. But on the other hand, I think I'm being a hypocrite because I'm part of it. I've always been a capitalist like Andrew. Because of my dyslexia, I've always had to start my own businesses, make my own future. I've done it since I was 23, Spencer. So am I deluding myself, Spencer? You know, are you, as an entrepreneur, are you not part of a system which has obviously got some major problems, hasn't it?
I mean, I agree with Andrew's point, but I think Andrew and I are of like mind, and this qualifies it because Nathalie is that way too. Entrepreneurs, by their definition, don't like to go past the stage of creating the idea into reality. So the problem with what happens in the life cycle of a product is after 5 years, you're asleep at the wheel. So Andrew's point of making stuff and selling it is 100% correct. And I would agree with that myself. So even in the products that I'm currently involved with, I say on a daily basis, like, I don't see myself in 10 years running launch flows. I see myself being a thought leader or somebody who other people come to, or being a financier of other ideas. But that's because I don't see myself retiring from what's otherwise a game, a monopoly game of find a problem, put people together, put money on it, and see what happens. That's not for everybody because there's other people. Your franchise example is a great visual. They want to buy a job. I know people who acquire Domino's pizza franchises. It's like literally 100 of the same business. But I came from a world where I was a real estate developer, and I did that with apartments for a long time, 25 years. So I think you have to decide what kind of hat matches your personality. And in the WordPress ecosystem, there are some people that would be really thrilled to run a popular, financially secure plugin for 15 years. They'd be overjoyed. That would not be me. But at the same time, I appreciate the fact that we're really talking about, does somebody have the ability to make an idea into reality today on their own, bootstrapped? And WordPress still affords that opportunity, but I'm suggesting you're now going to be competing against a stable of brand new horses being funded by a wealthy patron. And that's not the ecosystem that many of our popular sellouts came from. They were in a world where like one person stood out like a tree in a field of daisies, and now it's going to be a field of trees. And that's going to be a different type of strategy.
And I agree with you. You need money. You need money to put into these things. We've got Bertha.ai, we've got GutenbergAI.com. It's
or you need an audience.
They
Money
take
or an
money.
audience.
Well, it takes money to develop these things. Let me tell you, it takes money, and it's a concern that because these companies are buying these companies and there's such a high level. Syed's buying all-in-one SEO up, and all these other companies, and Automatic are buying Mail Poet and all that. So where are we? We are now we are now guided by these people with phenomenal funding, right? I'm doing it from my back pocket. Yeah, I've sold a couple of companies and made some money, but I've still got to have a car. I've still got to pay my rent. I've still got to feed my kid. And that is the concern of a solopreneur, which is what I am. There's nothing. I'm nothing more than that, and I'm a risk taker. So I've taken some risks. I've built some really phenomenal stuff. With Vito and Bertha and I, it's all about getting it out there.
I know you do sponsor the show, but I think what you and Vito have done with Bertha is very impressive and very interesting. And I would honestly say that even if you weren't sponsoring the show, I do honestly believe that it's one of the more interesting plugins.
And it's got a long way to go. I tell you, some of the things that we're going to be doing in the future are phenomenal, but they're going to take some finance. So, and the customers we've got over 1,000 users now. It's a phenomenal. We launched in September. It's crazy.
You even got my wallet open.
I've even got you as a customer. It's amazing. But
that's amazing.
The point about can we do this ecologically, conscientiously? Can we do it conscientiously with employing people? I've now got 6 staff, full-time staff. So it's hard.
I just want to wrap it up. The way I dealt with this, Spencer and Andrew, is I really see a difference between normal capitalism and being an entrepreneur and American corporate capitalism, which I see as a hybrid and not a particularly very attractive hybrid. I see American corporate capitalism has morphed itself into something pretty ugly. And if it can change, or is forced to change, more the better, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. Let's go on to our recommendations. Mine is the American Red Cross, because I know the American Red Cross and the International Red Cross personally helped my father and my grandfather when they were in most need of help. The International Red Cross came and helped both my grandfather and my father. So I still support the internet, and I have given money because I do deeply feel for the people of Kentucky. So that's my recommendation. So Andrew, have you got a recommendation for the tribe?
I have, and I'm going to recommend my new plugin, which is launched today, and it's called GutenbergAI.com, and it converts Elementor pages to Gutenberg.
All right, make sure it's in Slack, and I'll make sure
it's already in Slack there, so it's there.
Spencer, have you got a recommendation for the tribe?
Yeah, that's a good one, by the way, because I was talking to Andrew's partner, I believe in this, and he let me know about it, so I have to give this a shot today for helping out all those people that want to change over. I've got a similar, but not my own, recommendation. I gave a workshop this week, which went off very well, and one of the conversation points was, do you need an LMS in every case when you're building a stack? And sometimes it's good enough just to have pages and things connected with. There's 2 plugins, one of which is the WP Complete, which lets you connect for free various pages and posts. But then people said, well, how do I give a quiz? So there's a very capable plugin in the repository called the Quiz and Survey Master, best quiz exam and survey plugin. And it's free, and it lets you add quizzes to any of these self-made LMSs, which is pretty appropriate because for many people, an LMS like Learn Dash or Lifter is just too much. It's overkill. So this is a way to bake
Well,
your own.
they need to find a hybrid solution. I know one.
I mean, but the point is, like, it's always, I recommend two ways. You can take the heavy duty solution and leave 90% of it turned off. Or you
Folks,
just,
he sponsors my show, and I really love Spencer, but he never recommend my service to anybody. That's
what are you
just the
talking
truth.
about? This would be something you would set up for somebody. So in
I'm
other words,
only
it's-
kidding.
Definitely.
I know, but I mean,
kidding
it's
you.
still here's the neat thing. The takeaway is, for like your company as an intermediary professional, the world we're moving into is never been better for intermediary service providers. I've literally had this conversation 6 times in the last 2 days. Here's why. The snow globe of WordPress is being shaken up. You don't use the same tools. You don't use the same page builder. There's a Gutenberg element. There's things that convert the old plugins. Who is going to teach everybody in line behind you this thing? Your company or an intermediary. It is literally like 2014 all over again, where we went from HTML markup sites to page builder sites. But now the people are too busy and literally confused by the mix of the old and new. So I could not be more excited about the fact that there are a million ways to do things, because everybody agrees on one thing. I say to them, what do you think the WordPress experience is like to you versus going into like a Shopify or a Wix or Weebly? They're like, I'm confused as hell. And that means that there's a position
we
for
definitely
everybody.
solved the confusion for people. I'm determined to solve the confusion, because I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, solve it by sorting it out.
All right. Thank you, panel. I just wanted to say to both of you, Spencer and Andrew, you've been both fantastic panelists, and you regularly appear, and your contribution during the year has been fantastic, and all the panel and all the guests. I just want to personally wish you, Andrew, Spencer, yourself and your family a great Christmas and New Year. And thank you for being a panelist and also sponsoring the show, because I don't depend, obviously, on the sponsorship money in any shape or form, because I'd be living in a tent otherwise. But it does, if nobody's prepared to give any money to the show, it's a sign to me that the show really hasn't got any value for anybody. So it just shows me, and it covers the costs of running the show. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you, Tribe.
I'm hoping to do, by the way, a solo Christmas Eve WP-Tonic show all by myself here. No, I'm just kidding.
Like, we're having a break.
Login sense, we can do it. It's not a problem. We can do it.
Yeah. Get over it. We will be back in the new year, folks. I want to wish you and your families a great Christmas, New Year. Keep healthy. Keep away from that horrible virus. We'll see you in the new year, folks. Bye.
Cheers, Jonathan. Cheers, Spence. See you.
Cheers. It's good to see you again.